Thank you so much, Heather. That's a song that got me through many shifts when I worked as a counselor at Osborne House, and just was able to help keep me focused on being a warrior and continuing to speak out for those who can't speak, or to be speaking beside those so that they can speak. Now we're going to take a little bit of a travel across an ocean to Burundi, East Africa. We find the birthplace of our next speaker. Louise Simbandumwe was born in Burundi, grew up in India, Kenya, and small town Saskatchewan. Thankfully for us, she continued to travel and moved to Winnipeg, and has continued to fight for human rights, and is currently employed at SEED. She has over 15 years of experience in a variety of local and international community development work. She has worked on development projects in Bangladesh, India, and South Africa. At a local level, she's been involved in establishing the Mondragon Bookstore and Coffee House, a workers' collective based on participatory economic principles. Her expertise includes program development, program evaluation, adult education, small business development, and community organizing. That's just her expertise. Imagine how far her knowledge goes. She has a bachelor's degree in commerce and has completed a master's in comparative social research. As a former refugee, Louise is passionate about human rights and social justice. Her volunteer commitments include Amnesty International, the Winnipeg Poverty Reduction Council, Recreation and Culture Working Group, and the University of Winnipeg Community Renewal Corporation. I'm just so happy to introduce Louise.
Thank you very much. I'm not sure that I can top Heather. I thought maybe I should try singing a song, but then I think I'm going to take pity on all of you, and I will give you my speech instead. I was really honored and somewhat taken aback when I was asked to come and speak with you today. On this occasion, it is very difficult to know if we should be celebrating the incredible progress that has been made in women's rights over the past 100 years, or reflecting on the persistent gap that continues to exist between our aspirations and reality. I marvel at how far we've come. I grew up in Burundi at a time when girls were routinely pulled out of school to work land that they could never legally own because of their gender. I remember listening with horror as my mom explained to me, my mother who's here today, that Burundi is a country where women were essentially bought and sold as part of the marriage contract, where if a young girl was raped, the best outcome that she could hope for was that her rapist would be forced to marry her. I can't tell you how grateful I am for the degree of autonomy that I'm able to exercise in my own life, and the range of choices that are now available to me and my sisters to pursue our education and to make our own career choices, to decide if, when, and who we will marry. I know that these options did not simply fall on our lap. The rights we enjoy here in Canada were the results of battles that were waged by generations of women who came before us in the successive waves of the feminist movement. However, there's still a lot of work to be done. Unfortunately, we have no shortage of examples. There is Judge Robert Dewar's recent ruling, which amounted to a denial of our own autonomy over our own bodies. There is the inadequate response by all levels of government to the disproportionate scale of violence against Aboriginal women and girls in our community that Mae Louise Campbell spoke of so eloquently. Equal pay for work of equal value still seems like a long ways away. Women in Manitoba earn only 72 cents for every dollar that men make. And there are indications that we may actually be losing ground when we see Canada's declining ranking in the Global Gender Gap Report over the past decade. For the first time, we're actually behind the United States of America. When we look at other countries, especially in the Global South, the challenges before us are even more significant. Every year, more than 2,000 women die in Burkina Faso from complications during pregnancy and childbirth. That means at least 5 maternal deaths every single day. Most of these deaths can be prevented with timely, affordable, and accessible healthcare services. Rape and sexual abuse are widespread in Nicaragua, and most survivors of these attacks are young girls. More than 2/3 of all rapes reported are committed against girls under 17. There are 2.6 million domestic workers in Indonesia. These women and girls face increased risk of abuse because they are often isolated from their families and are not adequately protected by labor laws. And Perla talks about domestic workers from the Philippines and that being the main export and how vulnerable they are to abuse. As I speak to you today, there's the untold story of refugee women and girls from Ethiopia who are currently trapped in Libya, a story that doesn't make the news, and are being subjected to systematic rape by authorities. And one of my colleagues who just spoke with some of these women last night talked to them about what are the possibilities, is there any way for you to escape? And they said the only escape right now is suicide. Rather than dwelling on what needs to be done, I would like to focus my comments today on what keeps me inspired and engaged as a human rights activist. What keeps me going is the work of courageous and dedicated human rights defenders. I'm thankful, very thankful, to the diverse group of women who came together to organize this event. I'm also very thankful and actually quite surprised to see all of you here today. It's just an amazing, amazing array of people that have come together to celebrate this day. So thank you all for being here. Knowing that you took time away from your busy lives to mark this important occasion is an inspiration. It is challenging to continue doing this work when the hard-fought gains made by unions, women's groups, and other social justice activists are under sustained attack by our federal government. It is challenging to stand up for women's rights when identifying as a feminist can result in exclusion and ridicule. So thank you all for being here today to celebrate and affirm our commitment to the struggle for gender equality. I also draw my inspiration from the struggle of human rights defenders across the globe. I have often asked myself the impossible question: what would I risk to fight for something I believed in? Would I risk imprisonment? Would I risk torture? Would I risk my life to defend the rights of others? I don't know the answer to that question because I am lucky. I've never been put in the position where I had to make this type of decision. And I'd like to share 3 brief stories today of sisters in different corners of the globe who answered this question emphatically and with unflinching courage. In 1996, Dita Indasari, who was the leader of the Indonesian Center for Labor Struggle, was arrested for her work in defense of the rights of workers at the age of 22. She was adopted as an Amnesty International prisoner of conscience, and activists and other union members around the globe demanded her immediate and unconditional release. She was released early in 1999, and she immediately resumed her work on behalf of workers. In 2002, she was selected as the recipient of the $50,000 Human Rights Award from Reebok. She turned down the award to protest Reebok's record on workers' rights. In explaining her decision, she said, "The decision I have made is not merely based on data, reports, statistics, or assumptions. In 1995, I was arrested and tortured by the police after leading a strike of 5,000 workers of the Indo shoes Int'l industry. They demanded an increase in their wages and maternity leave as well. This company operated in West Java and produced shoes of Reebok and Adidas. I have seen for myself how the company treats the workers and used the police to repress the strikers." Another woman I deeply admire is Digna Ochoa, a leading Mexican human rights lawyer. I remember receiving an action appeal many years ago indicating that she'd been subjected to death threats because of her work and asking us to write to Mexican authorities to provide her with adequate protection. Digna knew that her life was in danger but continued her work on cases of torture and other serious human rights violations in which Mexican officials were implicated. And in talking about her work, she said, "They are after me. but I will not live in fear. It's injustice that motivates us to do something, to take risks, knowing that if we don't, things will remain the same. On October 19th, 2001, Digna Okoa was found shot in her office in Mexico City. The note that was left beside her body included death threats against her colleagues. Following in her footsteps is Hannah Abdi, a 20-year-old student who joined the Campaign for Equality, an organization that is trying to end legal discrimination against women in Iran. Hannah was arrested at her grandfather's house in 2007 and sentenced to 5 years in jail. She was adopted as an amnesty prisoner of conscience, and activists all over the world wrote letters demanding her release. Like Dita Sari, she gained her freedom before her sentence was completed. On February 26, 2009, Iranian authorities released Hannah Abdi from prison. What inspires me about these women is the risks they took to fight to defend the rights of other women. But I'm also inspired by the efforts of ordinary people around the world who wrote letters, signed petitions, and demonstrated to protect these women so that they would not be stopped or silenced. On this day, I hope that we'll take the time to celebrate our accomplishments while rededicating ourselves to working for women's rights at home and abroad. We owe it to the courageous women like Dita Sari, Digna Okoa, and Hannah Abdi. We also owe it to the families of missing and murdered Aboriginal women right here in our own community. And we owe it to future generations of women and girls. Thank you.